Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'm so excited about the guest that we've got on here today because this is someone who I feel like loves protecting businesses and loves thinking about things from a really technical perspective that a lot of us really want to ignore and that we may take for granted both as consumers and as business owners. So we're going to talk about the things that really matter from a cybersecurity perspective here today. And we're doing it with an amazing entrepreneur, not just an amazing cybersecurity expert, but this is someone who also has his own business to help other businesses excel in this. And his name is Dante Jackson. Let me tell you a little bit about Dante. He's the owner and CEO of Serket-Tech Security, which is a cybersecurity consulting firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Their team of experienced professionals with over 30 years of combined expertise specializes in creating customized end-to-end solutions tailored to each client's specific needs. Dante has experience in both the U.S. government and private financial sectors. So of course, two industries where this stuff really matters a lot. So he's got a lot of experience there, including multiple senior leadership roles at a top 10 U.S. bank. Dante offers a wide-ranging expertise encompassing threat management and mitigation, data protection, IT risk management, resilience strategies, and insider threat expertise. This is some big stuff that, like I said, we all probably ignore. Now, through his company, Dante has leveraged his expertise to provide tailored solutions to clients, empowering them to navigate the complex landscape of cybersecurity with confidence. He backs all this stuff up, not only with experience, he's also got the credentials as far as he has an MBA from the Georgia Institute of Technology and a Master of Science degree in Criminal Justice Management from Sam Houston State University. His academic achievements complement his extensive practical experience, positioning him as a trusted authority in both the corporate and consulting realms of cybersecurity. And that's all just a tease as to why we're so excited to have Dante here today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Dante Jackson. All right, Dante, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
No, thanks for having me, Brian. Really excited to be here with you today.
Heck yes. Now, we're going to be talking about some complex stuff, Dante, but I know you're going to simplify a lot of it for us, and I'm excited about that conversation. But before we get there, take us beyond the bio. Who's Dante? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I kind of fell into it as I, transitioned into the private sector. I went to one of the larger banks in the U.S. We were going through the biggest merger in U.S. history. And then, they were looking to build out their cybersecurity program. And like I tell everyone who's looking to get into the industry, sometimes you just have to have that break and someone willing to take a chance on you. And from there, I was just able to quickly develop my skills, put the work in and just kind of took off, and the career took off, the promotions took off, and the knowledge took off, which is most important because you can just take the knowledge anywhere that you go.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because starting in the financial sector, I know that we as consumers know and count on the fact that within the world of finances, these companies are protected and they take cybersecurity seriously. But that seems like something that they understand they have that obligation. I would imagine that a lot of companies and business owners kind of take that for granted and they only turn to cybersecurity experts like yourself when something bad happens. Where does cybersecurity, where should it fit into the overall mix of business?
I mean, Brian, you hit the nail on the head, right? I compare cyber insurance to car insurance, right? You don't care about it until you need it. And unfortunately, that's how some of these companies look at it. But I think the tide's changing. I mean, you're seeing the increased attack of ransomware, both nation state and individual in large companies here in the U.S. Many of us get these notifications in the mail, right? Where you get the year-long Experian credit monitoring service because company A has been hit and your data is now on the dark web. It's all very frustrating. But I think the tide's changing and companies are recognizing now that, hey, we have to get serious about the protection of our consumer data, the reputational damage, the losses, the fines, depending on what industry you're in. It all accumulates and it adds up, and it can be very damaging for a company.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like talking to people in the cybersecurity field, Dante, is because you all seem like you focus on things both at the macro level. You immediately went to, this is also geopolitically, it's a threat that we face on a really macro level, but you also focus on that micro level at a company level, at a consumer level. And so I want to ask you, what is cybersecurity? If we're talking about something so big and so global that spans governments, that spans every single consumer on the planet, we've all heard that term before, but what does it encompass? Does it make sure we have all got really great passwords, or what are the mechanics of what cybersecurity encompasses?
I think at its granular level, at its most simplest form, it's the protection of data, right? I mean, anytime you own a business, you have something unique to your business, right? And that can be described simply as data. And I think cybersecurity, at its essence, is the protection of that data in whatever form that comes in. And, it's funny that you asked that question, because anytime I go and I speak to, future graduates or people who are looking to get into the industry, they give me this look and they say, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. And I say, oh, great. What do you want to do? And then they kind of look at me like, well, what do you mean? Well, I'm like, do you want to do encryption? Do you want to do data protection? Do you want to do insider risk? I mean, there's all these verticals aligned. Do you want to do pen testing? I mean, there's all these verticals aligned to cybersecurity. I think it's very important for individuals to remember that when they're looking to go into cybersecurity, that, you want to get an idea of what you want to do once you kind of, get a general idea of all the different verticals within it, and then focus in on that. I'll add to that. There's all these different certifications out there. A lot of people think, hey, I can go this route. I don't need to get a degree. I can get certifications. But, nothing trumps experience, right? So you have to be able to, if you're going to go the certification route, or you're going to go the route to go to school, make sure that you have something lined up where you can get that experience, because it doesn't matter how many certifications you have or how many degrees you have. At some point, you have to get the experience and get the hands-on, keyboard time to be able to move up within, whatever space you want to go within cybersecurity.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, especially because as someone who went to business school, I always hear this blanket term thrown out there where people say, you should major in business. There's so many opportunities, or you should major in international business. There's a whole world of opportunities there. But you so correctly and so valuably call out the fact that there are verticals within all of these fields that people talk about. Talk to us about some of those, because to you, I mean, you can rattle these off so effortlessly, but I'm curious, especially from a business owner perspective, what are some of those things that we should be paying attention to? I mean, you talk about encryption, for example. We recently had Ajay Joshi on the show, and he talked about some homomorphic encryption strategies, for example. And that's stuff that if we've got technical solutions, we can bake into those, and understanding those, it's important for us to protect our consumers. But there's a whole other world of protecting our own data as businesses, protecting the data that we use. I'm going to call out ChatGPT, for example. We're all using all of these AI tools and passing a lot of our data there. There's so many important considerations. And that's not even looking at the consumer side of protecting our customers and clients. So, gosh, Dante, it's a loaded question, but what are those types of fields and verticals that we should be paying attention to?
So I think one place to start, it kind of encompasses a few of the concepts that you mentioned, and I think that's social engineering, right, and email phishing. From a consumer standpoint, from a business standpoint, it's just the frontline defense of kind of protecting a business, and as a consumer, protecting yourself. You mentioned ChatGPT, right, with the integration now and the kind of the explosion of AI. And AI is tricky, right? AI has been around for a very long time. I mean, machine learning has been around for a really long time, but kind of this commercialized explosion of AI has introduced the ability for bad actors to kind of leverage it to improve some of their social engineering skills, right? Back in the day, you would get an email, and there were some grammar issues going along the email. You can kind of pick things out. Hey, I have a daughter or a son that's in the U.S. I'm this prince, blah, blah, blah. Send me this money, send me a money order, and bang, you were hit that way. But, now with the AI and some of the tools out there, you can really clean up some of the grammar mistakes that made some of these emails easy to pick up. And even the creation of these emails, I mean, the logos, the backgrounds, I mean, everything looks so professional now. It's really, really hard to pick these things up. So, extensive training, right, from a company standpoint of what to look for from an email phishing standpoint, because these bad actors are leveraging all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, right, to kind of identify organizations, identify weak points within organizations to work their way to the top. They're no longer targeting the CEOs of these companies, right? They're targeting the admins of the CEOs that are booking the flight reservations, that are scheduling the pickup of the kids, right? That are emailing the wife. I mean, they're getting all this information that they can and collecting all this information that they can, so that when they do, make an attempt to go after that big whale, if you will, they have all their ducks in a row to make a valid and a valiant point to target this person. And it's very scary how they kind of incorporate all the different elements of social media into a targeting campaign.
Yeah, Dante, hearing you say that, you bring up a really valuable point that I've actually never thought about and I've never talked about here on this show. And you talk about how many solutions have become commercialized. And that's great for us because they've become more accessible to us as end users. But what it really got me thinking is, what's commercialized in your space? Because you already talked about Experian credit protection. And you're right, we've all gotten those from our credit card companies, from our financial institutions, from other companies that we've given our payment details to, and they've been compromised. And so they offer that as a a benefit. It seems like there's a lot of commercialized solutions for protecting us after something has happened. What's commercialized to protect us before things happen? And I guess it's a really natural segue into obviously what you do as a service. So what does that look like when you work with a cybersecurity expert to plug those gaps that aren't necessarily commercialized for us just yet?
Yeah, so especially from a company standpoint, we typically go in and the first thing we like to do for companies is pen testing, right? And that helps to show a company their vulnerabilities. Hey, where are you vulnerable? If I was a bad actor, if I'm an ethical hacker at this point right now, I want to show you how I would try to get into your network or expose your network. Where can we help you kind of remediate and plug some of those gaps so that, the idea here is strengthening your security posture. I use the analogy of the big bad wolf, right? What you don't want to be is the house made of straw, right? You want to be the house made of brick. So that when a bad actor does come, he doesn't see us off target. He moves on to the next target because you're never 100% clean or 100% bulletproof from a cyber attack. And I think that's a mistake people make. And I think that's along the line sometimes the frustrating part about cybersecurity. You can invest a lot of money into cybersecurity, and at some point you still may be vulnerable, but that's okay. You want to make yourself as hard a target as possible so that bad actors kind of move on from you and move on to a more softer target. But the pen testing, the vulnerability management, the assessments, there's levels to this, Brian. I mean, how deep and how far you want to go into it, and how much you want to invest to protect your data, essentially, and your customer data, and protect your customers and your reputation. And those are things that you have to really consider. But from a very high level, a good place to start is really with the pen testing, and then you can start talking about access management. Ensuring that your employees only have the access that they need, the data protection models, making sure you know where your data at, you have it classified. There's multiple levels to this game, if you will, and it really just depends on how far you want to go and how deep how many innings you want to go into the game.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm super curious to get some insights into the types of conversations that you have with your clients and also your prospective clients, because obviously most decisions that we're all making as business owners is this going to bring me ROI? And like we talked about, you have extensive experience, government sectors, financial sectors, so many others in the clients that you've serviced at this point. So what's that conversation usually look like? Are they looking for a financial justification? You talk about how much you want to invest in this stuff. A lot of people just want to kick the can down the road, obviously. You likened it to insurance as those things that sometimes we have to do it, but obviously a lot of times we don't want to do it. What's that conversation look like to kind of sell that value proposition to companies?
Well, it starts with leadership, right? And a lot of times it's a hard sell, but it starts with the leadership and where their focus is, and how much do they want to protect the data and the reputation of the company itself. And you have to have that buy-in from executive leadership because they control the funding, especially when you're dealing in the financial sector, right? Where the business is the revenue generator of the company, right? The cybersecurity insurance portion of it is an expense. Sometimes it doesn't pay off. Sometimes you don't have those attacks or those hits. So you're paying all this money for continuous monitoring and various solutions, and you might not see the return, but really the return can be a quiet return. And a lot of the conversations we have with our initial clients is really educating them on how they can protect themselves, understanding the model of their business itself and what benefits them the most. And I think from our standpoint, our business standpoint, what the model we've created is a custom model, giving businesses what they need and not what we want, right? So, if you have 10 solutions, trying to sell a company 10 solutions when they only need 4, or trying to sell a company a solution that fit, with Bank of America, but it doesn't fit at Wells Fargo, right? Or trying to force it to fit at Wells Fargo because it fit at Bank of America and they're both in the banking sector. I think you really, really have to get into that customization for a solution for a particular client and help them understand why they need it and how it's going to protect them. And then from there, you get that buy-in and you get that investment, and you can really do well and do good and do proper by the client.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Dante, I'm going to publicly praise you here because I think that answer speaks volumes about the way that you also do business. You're not just talking about cybersecurity right now. What I really appreciate is someone who myself and our pre-production and post-production team, we've already gone through the way that you operate, and it's why we so appreciate you about that transparency and vulnerability and really that honesty about, hey, let's create custom solutions that work for you. And on that point, I want to go back to the house analogy. It's something that I always love in the cybersecurity field about hardening your house. And when I hear you talk about that, I imagine what most people will lead themselves to believe hearing you say, and they're like, well, yeah, there's 500 other houses on this street, and most of them are bigger than my house. Why would anyone mess with mine? And a lot of small business owners can fall into that trap, Dante, of convincing themselves, well, no, this is an issue that faces the Bank of Americas, the Wells Fargos of the world. Why should we care as small business owners?
Yeah, so I think there's a percentage here, and my numbers may be slightly off, but not too far off. I believe it's 68% of startup businesses go bankrupt due to a ransomware attack or a cyber attack, and that number alone should kind of raise alarm bells in your head if you're a business owner or even beginning to think about starting your own business. These guys do not care about the size, right? They are there for the money. And I'll break it down a little bit. Think about it. If you go out and you take a $50,000 loan to start your business, Joe's Pizzeria, you're buying a building, you're buying equipment, you're hiring employees, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a ransomware for $100,000. How do you recover from that, right? You can negotiate that down, or you call a service and they come in and they charge you a fee, and then you negotiate it down, and either you pay the ransom or you don't. But then what happens when they double back and they hit you again, or they encrypt your data and then they re-encrypt it, and then they're trying to charge you twice? It can literally destroy your business. And it's very, very sad. The percentages are astronomical about how many businesses just simply don't survive a ransomware attack. And this stuff is serious, and it's just getting easier and easier to do with the AI integration and just the accessibility to computers and some of the technical skills these hackers have. You have to remember, they're not playing with any rules, right? We're playing within rules. We're playing within the confines of assessments and compliance and things of that nature. They're not playing within the same rules that we are. So they can just go out and do what they need to do, and they can attack anybody anytime. And it can be very, very hurtful and detrimental to your business, especially if you're a small business. So I think a big mistake that a lot of small businesses make is like, why would they care about us? They're not going to attack us. We're small. We're a small fish in a big pond. But no, you guys are an easy target. It's much, much harder to get into a bigger organization than it is into a small business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that part of your job, I imagine, is to think like an attacker. And part of that is, I could hit one huge house, but I'm probably going to land in a lot of trouble. And they also probably have a huge budget to stop me from doing that. So let me go after the small guys. Let me go after those small business owners. And just as a really small scale example, just at a website level, I've got a plugin on one of my WordPress installations that tells me how many times someone tried to attack my WordPress database with SQL injections and all sorts of other things. And when I installed it, I thought to myself, this is completely pointless. It's never going to flag anything. But every week I get a report of the hundreds of attacks and attempted attacks and what countries they're from. And it's crazy because, to your point, they don't play by rules, especially when we're talking about a global game of whack-a-mole. We're never going to be able to stop them. So we have to protect ourselves. So give us some examples, Dante. You mentioned ransomware, but I don't think people probably fully understand and appreciate what types of costs can be incurred by ignoring this type of stuff. So what are some of those?
Yes, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the verticals that we assist with is the trucking industry. And I have a good friend of mine. He's a VP for a trucking company, and they actually go around, they speak to this at some of the bigger trucking seminars. They were hit with ransomware. Their data was encrypted, and they lost $1 million a day for 7 days. And that's how long it took for them to negotiate with the hackers and to get everything kind of remediated and fixed and get their data returned to them. But you have to think, as a logistics company, right? You have trucks out all over the country that are carrying cargo that are being expected to be delivered to customers. You have to think those customers don't care about what's going on in your world, right? They want their goods, because that's effectively hurting their business, because they don't have the goods that's required for them to continue doing what they need to do, right? So reputational damage we talked about earlier. So that company is going to look elsewhere because they're not getting the goods they need in a timely manner so they can continue their business. So it not only affects that particular business where the ransomware hits, we're talking about the fruits of a poisonous tree, right? Just tagging everything, all these different businesses across the country. And yes, they lost literally $1 million a day to the tune of $7 million as they tried to continue negotiating it and decrypting their data to get it back. And just had complete chaos within their organization for over a week. And some of this could have been prevented, right, if they would have took the necessary steps to have some things in place to protect their business from a cybersecurity standpoint. And that's what they go around speaking on now is they wish they would have done these things and kind of educating the industry on how to prevent what they went through.
Yeah, really well said. And this stuff has real life implications. Dante, I love the fact that I asked you that question and you didn't jump to theories or hypotheticals. You jumped straight to a real life example. And that's the stuff that we love and appreciate because, yeah, it's scary, but I think that's the scary real life examples that we need to confront. And especially hearing you talk about this, part of me wants to ask you, and obviously we don't want to go too in depth here, but how much of your job is thinking like a hacker, thinking like that attacker? How do you stay ahead of it? Because I would imagine that they're getting more sophisticated. And with the introduction of AI, there's probably new ways that they can play around and learn new strategies and brainstorm new strategies. Makes me think that all the times I'm using AI for brainstorming for good things, they're probably using it way more for bad things. So talk to us about that side of your role.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%, a large portion of what we do is thinking like a bad guy. I mean, you have to if you want to stay in this business and stay ahead, or otherwise you're going to lose in this game, because make no mistake about it, it is a game. We spend a lot of time in hacker rooms and kind of until they kind of figure out, or think we're the police and kick us out. But, we spend time just kind of seeing what people are talking about, what some of these hackers, some of the information they're sharing, how they're incorporating things into the dark web, and some of the strategies that they discuss, because they exchange these things. I mean, they have conversations, some of these guys form alliances and allegiances together to kind of do mass attacks or large scale attacks. It's a very fascinating culture within the hacking culture. So we spend quite a bit of time just brainstorming about, how can we stay ahead? What's next? What are we seeing in the industry? What are the trends? It's a lot of time doing research. It's a lot of times doing reading. It's a lot of times spending times in these rooms, these hacker rooms, seeing what people are talking about and what's the latest and greatest software. Some of this hacking software has been packaged. I mean, it's become commercialized. It's no longer, someone sitting in a room and kind of, creating their own methods of doing hacking. I mean, you can literally purchase software to go in and try to do hacking. It's a really, really amazing when you take a step back and look at how this industry has evolved from an ethical and a hacker standpoint.
Yeah, it's true. Again, coming to that commercialization, all the good stuff is becoming more accessible, but in the information age and the internet age, all the bad stuff is also becoming more accessible. So Dante, I really appreciate you calling that out. I want to ask you about both sides of the coin, because having gone into the work that you do, which, by the way, I love the brand that you've built and the way that you show up. I think that so much of your personality and the way that you think about this stuff shows up in the way that your business shows up. Your headline on your website, Securing Tomorrow, Protecting Today. I think it shows your emphasis on both sides of that of, hey, here, part of it is protecting us today, but also you can't just do an initial assessment and an initial setup of fortifying your house, for example. You have to actually ongoingly secure that tomorrow. So talk to us about what that looks like for people who have never gone through a cybersecurity project and protected their business, not only today, but tomorrow. What's that ongoing relationship and obligation look like?
Yeah, I think it starts by understanding your data, understanding what you have again, right? Because at the core, at the essence, that's what you're protecting. So I think that's where it really, really starts. And then again, identifying where your vulnerabilities are. And then you start going to that next level of managed services, right? You kind of spoke about, Brian, you took a look at some of the hits that are occurring on your website. And I think people would be totally shocked at how many attempts daily are made to kind of breach, a company. Essentially, this is a company that you're operating, right? And it's a global brand. So, I mean, you have attackers from all over the world looking to gain access to see what type of data they can essentially extract from your business to likely throw on the dark web or hold for ransom against you. So I think, again, understanding your data and then taking that next step of continuous monitoring is kind of where we sit down with companies and say, hey, you've taken that first step, you've identified where your data is, you've identified where your vulnerabilities are. Now you need that ongoing protection. And that, that's where we can help you, right? To kind of do that active monitoring and that managed service of kind of knowing, what are you facing, who's looking to come after you, how can you fortify your defenses and strengthen that security posture is a term we use a lot.
Yeah, Dante, I so appreciate those insights. I want to switch gears a little bit because hearing you talk about this stuff, it's amazing hearing your cybersecurity hat, but I also know that something I remind listeners of all the time is that all of our guests, you are a fellow entrepreneur, you're a fellow business owner, and I want to tap into that entrepreneur hat of yours. And part of what I view is your role and the way that it seems to me like it's at the core of your brand and your service to clients is that you are a leader for them as well. You take ownership of that big responsibility for their businesses. And it's something that I also know you invest in your own business. Is you are, of course, the leader of your own business, your own team. Talk to me about what leadership means to you, because I so appreciate the way you show up, not only in today's episode, but in all of your work. And I want to hear some insights there.
Yeah, so I think leadership means being prepared, having an understanding of who your team is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and aligning them to projects and giving them assignments that lend to their strengths, but also improve their weaknesses, right? And pairing people up where they're strong and another person may be weak. A big part of, the entrepreneurial process, especially in cybersecurity, where, you're fighting against some of the big four, right? It's a David versus Goliath, because there's a lot of big companies out there that can offer cybersecurity services at a much, much lower rate, or they can heavily discount things because they can make money up on the back end with some of their $1 million projects. I think, sales is just a really huge part of it. And that was kind of the part of it that I didn't realize is like how much of owning your own company is a sales portion of it, and being able to, approach people and walk up to people and say, hey, do you have an understanding of what's going on? I mean, I'll give you an example. I went to a conference yesterday and I met with a CEO that's working on $1 billion project here in Atlanta. And he was on the way out after speaking. And I said, hey, can I just walk with you? And he said, sure. I said, have you guys given any thought to your cybersecurity needs, with respect to this major project? I mean, it's a construction project. And he goes, well, I don't think we really need anything cybersecurity related. And I go, well, do you have blueprints to the power lines and to the city plumbing underneath, where you guys are digging under the street? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's very valuable to a nation state government, right? To have that information, to have those plans with respect to, company and where the electrical grid is running and where the water is coming from there. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, you know what? He goes, let's talk. He's like, I don't even know where to start. And I think being an entrepreneur is helping people understand like what their needs are when they don't always see them.
Yeah, gosh, Dante, these real life stories that you're bringing here today, it's something that listeners appreciate about this show is the fact that there are no pre-planned questions. And I, as a host, really appreciate how quickly and just on the spot you're giving us these real life stories. And I think that it shows the way that you think and you see these things everywhere because, of course, you have so much experience in the field and you've been doing it for so long. So huge kudos to you. It also makes me want to ask you, what did that jump look like? You were in the cybersecurity field within these big businesses working internally, but somewhere along the way, you realized you have so much value add in the marketplace and you said, I want to bring this to more businesses, to more clients. What gave you that push? Ultimately, what was that decision of just a lot of people dream about it and think about it, but you actually did it, Dante. What did that look like?
Yeah, so it's kind of twofold for me. So one, I have to give credit to Georgia Tech, the Georgia Institute of Technology. When I went through their master's program, we created a startup company that was kind of part of our, thesis, if you will, for the MBA program. I think going through that process and having a true understanding of, hey, let customers drive your ideas, let customer discovery drive what your project is and what your business will look like. And I think, the most important thing is you don't have to create a new idea. You can just improve on what's out there, right? So, you don't have to always reinvent the wheel. And I think that's a big misconception among a lot of people is like, oh, I got to come up with some new application or some new business that no one's ever thought of. And that's not really always the case. If you can improve on things that are out there already, you can have a very successful business. So I think going through that program gave me the courage and the understanding of what it looks like to actually create a business from scratch. And then when I got back and I completed the program, I realized like, hey, I have some institutional knowledge. I have some contacts out there. I have a really strong network. Why not get out there and see what we can do? And, listen, there's been a lot of hiccups along the way. There's going to be mistakes made. But at the same time, to see where we've grown from beginning to where we are now is, and you take a step back and kind of look back, it's pretty remarkable. And it's pretty exciting to know what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, I love hearing those insights, especially because talking entrepreneur to entrepreneur, it's that harsh reality of no matter how prepared we are, and I know how important preparation is to you, there's always going to be those obstacles along the way. It's something that we all face, and that's why here on this show, this is the type of conversation I wish I heard when I first started out in my business. Is I always thought that people who come on podcasts and people who host podcasts have all the answers, but Dante, this is the real stuff, and I appreciate you bringing it to us. And it makes me want to ask, with that executive hat on, as someone who also looks into the future as much as you do, what does your executive time look like? Are you planning out, what you want your company to look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, especially taking not only the academic approach to it, but also the practical approach that you have under your belt? What is it that you're looking at in your executive time? What are the questions you're asking yourself? What are the plans that you're making for the future?
Yeah, so for me, it's always about setting goals, right? And have an understanding of how much revenue do we want to drive in the next year? What does that look like? How much expansion from a team standpoint will we need the next year as the projects continue to flow in? And also, how many projects do we want to take on? I think it's very important when you're a startup company to have an understanding of like, you don't want to overextend yourself and take on too many projects. And then you start losing in the quality department, right? Something's going to give. So, you don't want to scale out too quickly, right? You want to have an understanding of, hey, we're only going to take 3 projects on, depending on size, that's all we have capacity for right now. And you have to draw that hard line in the sand, because if you overextend yourself and you start scaling out too quickly, then again, your quality is going to give. And then that's when you start having that reputational damage and people don't want to deal with you. I can't compete. I don't have the collateral that a Deloitte or an EY or one of the big 4 companies has. I don't have that collateral built in where I can fail on a project and it won't really matter because the brand name is there. We're building a brand here. So we have to continue to do a really, really good job and show customers like, hey, we're going to give you more value than some of these bigger companies are. You're going to be able to talk to the CEO of the company, to have direct contact with me if there's an issue or a problem. And, if there's someone you're working with that you're not happy with, we can get that person changed out immediately. So you have to show that value to the customers. They're paying you a lot of money. They're putting a lot of trust in you from a data standpoint. I mean, you're seeing data that they have. You're seeing the problem that these companies have. So it's really about winning trust with those customers and showing them not only the value, but that you're a trustworthy company.
Yeah, I love that answer, Dante, especially because it makes me think about behind the scenes of your business, how sensitive these relationships are. You are very intimate, probably one of the only ones that can compete with your level of intimacy is accountants, because they're the ones who are seeing our financial data, which is not a very comfortable experience the first time that you work with an accountant, but it's a necessary part of growing a business. And so with that in mind, I'd love to just ask you, going on the topic of leadership, obviously putting people in those right roles, what's important to you when you assess the different talent that's out there? Actually, I'm going to loop back in what we talked about earlier is that everybody wants to go into cybersecurity now. It's one of the fastest growing fields, and there's a flood in the marketplace of that type of talent. How do you, as a CEO, assess that talent to make those very important decisions of who you onboard with your team?
Yeah, so cybersecurity is in a unique space right now with all the layoffs. There's a lot of talent out there on the bench right now, and then there's a lot of opportunity. It makes it challenging for people who are graduating or young cybersecurity entrepreneurs or people that are looking to break into the industry because there's 20-year engineers sitting on the bench that are looking for jobs. So it's a very challenging place right now. But typically what I've done when I'm kind of onboarding and identifying talent, what's your skill set? We have an idea of what our projects looks like. I have an idea of what skill sets that are required to accomplish those projects. And then B, what's the referral? Like typically, my hires are referrals. I'll reach out to people I know in the industry, friends I have in the industry, my own personal network to see, hey, who fits this and what do they like and who knows them personally? Because again, I don't have the collateral as a new business to fail. To fail with a project, to have someone come in and they can't do the job that we promised the company they can do. We have a lot of partnerships with VARs and other companies that kind of advertise our services, and we work closely with them as an extension of them. We're an extension of that company. So, not only will we ruin their relationship with the customer and our relationship with the customer, but it just ruins everything all the way around with respect to kind of our reputation. So we have to do a good job, and I have to really be picky about who I select. Now, there's a second part to that because although we're picking, senior people who have, abilities and are known in the industry, there's kind of a nonprofit component to what I've set up within our company. And that's to give rising juniors and rising seniors, opportunities to kind of work these real world projects alongside a senior engineer. So I've reached out to some of the universities here, Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State, Clayton State University, some of the HBCUs here in Atlanta to kind of offer opportunities for some of these students to come in and be paired up with engineers on projects that we're working so they can get that real world experience and also see what they like. Again, kind of going back to an earlier part of our conversation where, I talk to students and they say they're interested in cybersecurity, but they have no idea what area of cybersecurity they want to go into. Well, what better way than to work on a project and see like, hey, you know what? Pen testing is really cool. I want to be a pen tester. Or, hey, ransomware is really awesome. I want to, work ransomware remediation. Or, maybe I don't want to do encryption. It's not what I thought it was going to be or what I read up. So, you know where to kind of focus your efforts with respect to, certifications and experience and you have something to put on your resume. So that's something I'm really proud of that we've done on the side and offering opportunities to some of these university students.
Yes, I love that, Dante. I so appreciate the way that you share that with our audience. And these are important considerations for all of us in our own businesses. Obviously, we're talking within the context of cybersecurity here today, but the way that you think applies universally when it comes to any industry, any business size. So I appreciate those insights. We could talk about this stuff for days, Dante, and I've been so grateful to have you on the show. But I always love asking this question at the end of episodes because it is super broad. You can take it in any direction you want. And that is, what's that one takeaway, the one piece of advice, knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their growth journeys? What's that one thing you want to impart on them?
I think if you have an idea and you really, really believe in what you want to do and you're really willing to put the work in for it, go for it. You'll hear 100 people tell you that it's not going to work. It'll never work in that industry. There's so many people out there doing that. I thought the industry was going to be flooded when I first got into, cybersecurity and starting my own company. I found that not to really be the case from a boutique cybersecurity standpoint. Do your own research. If you're willing to put the work on, you can 100% be successful. There'll be, again, so many people trying to talk you out of the deal or tell you you're crazy. And that's because they're scared, right? Overcome the fear component of starting your own business and really go for it. And I'll share some advice that, one of my close friends who has a successful business I went to college with shared with me when I first started considering starting my own business. He said that first Friday when you don't get that paycheck, it's going to be the hardest Friday of your life. And it's very true. But he was like, if you can overcome that and overcome the fear of not having that consistent paycheck that you become used to, you'll be successful in starting your own business. And I'll share that with everyone and all your listeners here, that just be prepared that first week where you don't have that, consistent 2-week paycheck that you've been leaning on for all these years coming in. It's going to be a very, very tough day for you. But if you can get past that day, you're going to have a lot of success in the industry.
Boom. Dante, I'll tell you what, I don't think I've ever said this publicly at the end of an episode, but man, you need your own podcast. Not many people in your space can articulate things the way that you do. I so appreciate it. You personally remind me of that Einstein quote, which is, if you want to help someone, or if you want to impress someone, make it complicated. If you want to help someone, make it simple. And I think that you are doing such important work in the world of cybersecurity, but also just the way you think. It's refreshing to hear all of that in your field, but also beyond that, applying to all the entrepreneurs. And I appreciate that advice for all of our listeners. So because you don't have a podcast just yet, you have an obligation still to drop some links on us. You've got an amazing website where you're showcasing all the great and important work that you're doing with your own company and as you continue to grow. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, so check out our website. It's serkettech.com, www.serkettech.com. Visit our website there. There's links there to our social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, obviously LinkedIn. We have a business LinkedIn page. So we have all the traditional social media, platforms out there. We have a lot of fun. Our Instagram's fun. We're building that out. We're taking pictures and having a good time there. And then, you have the more serious stuff on LinkedIn and things of that nature. But, please, join, help us grow. We're always looking to help people out and looking for, any partners that we have out there. But, if you ever have any questions, I'm easy. I'm accessible. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I love to, answer any questions people may have. I have a passion for this stuff and a passion for helping people who are looking to break into the industry. I know you have a global audience. It may take me a while to get back to you, but I promise you I will.
Yes, I so appreciate that. Listeners, you already know the drill. You're going to find all of those links to Dante's website, his social media channels, as well as his personal LinkedIn down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So just go right down there, click through. You'll find all of those. Dante, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. I really had a great time.